We really wanted to focus on aquatics for our project.
The study of microplastics is very heavily done in marine ecosystems, and we wanted to study it more in freshwater.
Our research question was, are microplastics present in the freshwater bodies of Fundy National Park? And if so, do human activity levels affect the abundance of microplastics in each lake? It's kind of like being a detective, really. There's just so much to discover.
So our collection method for our sediment was simply done by hand. And at some lakes it was quite easy, walk up and scoop, whereas others we were using waders.
We took samples from Bennett Lake, Wolf Lake, Tracy Lake, Laverty Lake, Bruin Lake, and McLaren Pond. Even the clothing that we wore could even have shed microplastics into our sample, so we had to be careful and wear cotton clothing.
Because we had such large sample sizes, the most difficult part of the lab work was the hours spent under the microscope, searching for the plastics themselves.
The lab work was a lot more difficult. It required a lot of focus, looking into the microscope and keeping track of the amount of microplastics that we saw. And just identifying a microplastic from the sediment surrounding it was difficult. It required a critical eye.
Most of the microplastics that we found were fibers. Very few were fragments, and the fibers that we found were very long, entangled, very frayed at the edges.
The most surprising part about our results was the high presence of fibers we found. 92% of them were fibers, which originate normally from synthetic clothing and fabrics.
Before ever doing this study, I had absolutely no idea that I was shedding plastic from my clothing. And I would see little fuzzy things coming off my clothing and stuff, but it just never clicked in that they were microplastics. Well, my perspective was completely changed after looking in the microscope and seeing all of the fibers that were there that most likely came from clothing. It was visually seeing to that scale, that micro scale, all of those little fibers.
Being able to see a project through from start to finish like this has been really interesting, and I think one of the best parts has been the field work, seeing as our study site was such a beautiful environment.
I think the course in general gave me a lot of freedom to allow me to pursue things that I was more interested in than the normal textbook class would normally do. This way I was able to apply my learning in a sense that I really cared, not just getting my grade. It was more because I wanted to pursue the issue of microplastics, and I got to do that in this course.